We are now 8 days removed from what's being called an inherently political raid on a former president's home, 80 days before hugely consequential midterm elections. Joining us now for more is Harvard Law professor and author of the new book, The Price of Principle, Why Integrity is Worth the Consequences. He is also a Newsmax analyst. Alan Dershowitz is joining us this morning. Great to have you back on. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, I'm wondering what your take is on why this raid happened 8 days ago. What do you think the DOJ is really after here?
Well, I think they were trying to circumvent the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments to the Constitution. They were going by way of subpoena, and when you have a subpoena, the judge has to look at every document and see whether it's classified, declassified, privileged, whether or not a Fifth Amendment claim can be made. But when you do a search, you circumvent all that. And you grab the stuff, and then the burden shifts to the other side. So they were trying to avoid the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendment. I think they were also looking for the widest array of evidence they could possibly get, including evidence relating to January 6th. And the other point that I really want to make is that for the 60 years that I've been doing this, liberals have always objected to using searches. Liberals have always objected to, instead of subpoenas, liberals have always objected to using the Espionage Act of 1917.
Right.
Suddenly, these liberals and civil libertarians are jumping up and down in joy because they went after Donald Trump. We're living at an age where progressives and radicals on the left believe you can do anything, you can trash the Constitution, you can destroy the rule of law, as long as the goal is to get Donald Trump. I'll give you another example. My former colleague, Lawrence Tribe, a professor at Harvard Law School, said on CNN that he was urging his former student, the Attorney General of the United States, to prosecute Donald Trump for the attempted murder of Vice President Pence. That is about the stupidest thing I have ever heard a law professor say. And yet it's praise, because if you want to get Trump, any stupid statement, any violation of the Constitution, all becomes acceptable.
Do you think that the affidavit should be released? The justification is that unprecedented action should be justified and backed up by unprecedented justification.
Well, I think the justification should be released because Donald Trump has not expressed any objection. He's asked to have it released, and it's designed to protect the person searched. Now, of course, you can redact the names of agents, you can redact sources and methods, but what we want to know is what the basis is. What probable cause did they have? We, the public, is entitled to sit in judgment over the magistrate judge. We're entitled to sit in judgment over the Attorney General. They are not above the law, and they have to justify their conduct, and their conduct is either justified or not justified based on the affidavit. I have a general rule of thumb. Those who try to hide things are generally wrong, and those who try to disclose things are generally right. I think that applies in this case.
Good point. Alan, you've been at this, like you said, 60 years. How do you think this plays out? Is there a chance, and we know that the Democrats would love this, but is there a chance that we see a former president charged and ultimately perp walked in handcuffs and arrested?
Look, if you follow what the Justice Department has done to people like Manafort and Navarro, yes, it's possible. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to be arrested. The goal of the Larry Tribes of the world is to get him indicted and prosecuted so he can't run again for president. Of course, they're dead wrong. He can run for president even if he's indicted, convicted, and wearing striped shirts, prison garb. The Constitution provides only 4 bases for disqualification from president, and being convicted of a crime is not one of them. And Congress can't change the criteria that are in the Constitution for the election of the president.
Just a quick one. I'm wondering what you think about the questions as to whether or not Joe Biden knew this raid was going to happen. The White House is briefed on a weekly basis by various departments throughout Washington. And if Joe Biden wasn't aware of this, what does that say about Joe Biden?
Well, no, I think here I'm on the Biden side. I do think that the White House has tried very hard to separate themselves from the Justice Department and to keep the Justice Department free of politics. Have they succeeded? Probably not. But I would myself doubt that President Biden himself knew that this raid was going to happen. I suspect they knew that Trump was under investigation. I suspect there were other people in the White House who probably had greater detail, perhaps in the counsel's office. But I believe President Biden when he says he was not aware specifically that this raid was about to occur.
Alan, your new book, The Price of Principle, Why Integrity is Worth the Consequences. Tell us about that.
Well, today, partisanship trumps principle. I've tried to be a principled person. I voted against Donald Trump twice. I want to make sure he's not disqualified so I can vote against him a third time. I'm not a Trump supporter. And yet I have been pilloried. The library where I live won't allow me to speak. They won't carry my books. Caroline Kennedy told me that if she knew I was invited to an event, she would not go there. My family has been attacked and berated just because I defended the president of the United States on the floor of the Senate. Pure McCarthyism. And I tell that story in great detail in my book. Yeah. I name names, point fingers, and it's a very readable account.
I like that about you, by the way, Alan. I heard your story about Larry David with Martha's Vineyard. That's where I'm from out there. And that story got a lot of coverage in the local little papers out there on the vineyard. Are you able to go back to the island and still enjoy?
I'm living on the island, having a good time, enjoying it with my family. My children are visiting. But look, if it can happen to me, it can happen to you. It can happen to anybody. Yeah, this cancel card left is unconstitutional, illegal, against American principles, and a throwback to McCarthyism. And The Price of Principle, my book, tells that story. So please read it. I would really appreciate that. And it will help if you get that book. I think it will stand up and help against the cancel culture that people are trying to impose on somebody who just defended the constitutional rights of the president. Look, the people of Martha's Vineyard today would probably not allow John Adams to come onto the island because he defended the people accused of the Boston Massacre.
Now I've got you talking about Martha's Vineyard. Alan, we've got to leave it there. So good seeing you this morning. Come back and see us soon. We appreciate the insight, as always. Alan Dershowitz with us this morning.